All right, well, let's call the meeting to order then. First thing we're going to do is, well, let me just say one quick introductory thing. This is the first time we've done a Zoom meeting, obviously. This is going to be quite different from what we're all used to. Appreciate your patience. I think we all know about Zoom calls these days, but we haven't done it for the library yet. So we'll all do our best here to find our way through. And I think you're going to find that there's a little more structure in this meeting than we would normally have.
It's starting.
Yeah, okay. There's a little more structure to this
Daddy
meeting.
does it as
Hold on a sec. A little more structure than we might normally use because it's just easier on the Zoom call to take turns and such. So I appreciate your forbearance with that. So we're going to start with the roll, and Jinder, why don't you go ahead and call it?
Okay, Trustee Cortez.
Looks like not.
I'm here trying to get rid of my family in the background.
Oh, okay. She's here. Good.
Trustee Duke Hughes.
I'm here.
Trustee Fromm.
Here.
Trustee Ross.
Here.
Chair Libresco.
Here. Okay, that's great. So Jinder, would you give us a little introduction to how all of this is going to work? And I don't know that we have anybody else listening in other than our small group, but go ahead with your introduction anyway, please.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Viewers are welcome to provide public comment online through Zoom or by telephone at 669-900-9128. And the meeting ID is 815-4868-4301#. If you are watching the meeting on Zoom and wish to provide public comment, please select the raise hand feature either on the bottom of your screen or through the participants icon. If you are participating by telephone and wish to provide public comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. When it is your time to speak, you will hear a notification that you have been unmuted, and you will have 2 minutes to provide your comments.
Okay. So the first thing on our agenda is any amendments to the agenda. I have one thing I'd like to say quickly, which probably won't lead to a real amendment, and that is that obviously we've all been dealing with coronavirus and we've been dealing with the economic implications of that, and a lot of the work the staff has done for tonight is to put together information about that. The other thing that's affected our world and even our little city here is racial justice, and we don't seem to have anything on that on the agenda. So we're probably, maybe Henry can take us into more depth on that in a future meeting. I know we can't throw in brand new items on an agenda, but if staff feels it's appropriate to give us 30 seconds on what your initial thinking is on that or what the library might do, I'm sure we'd all appreciate it. If you feel like that's just not appropriate because it's not on the agenda, we certainly would understand. Anybody else have any comments on the agenda?
Great addition, Josh.
Okay. All right, so let's, and if there are no comments on the agenda, I don't know that we have to approve the agenda. So we'll just go on and ask about the minutes from February. I don't know if you remember February, but it was a while ago. But you had a chance to look at the February minutes probably over the last few days. Does anybody have any comments or questions about the February minutes? If so, I think you pushed the little question, a little participant question thing there. Did I get that right? I don't know how to do this. Anyway, does anybody have anything you want to say about the minutes from February? Nothing, okay. Can I hear a motion to approve the minutes from February?
I'll also motion.
Okay, how about a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? We can't raise our hands probably, Ginger, can we? We have to do it out loud? You have to take a voice vote?
Yes.
Okay, could you call the roll and we'll take a voice vote? And I believe everybody can vote as long as you, it doesn't matter if you're at the meeting or not, everybody can vote, correct? Yes. So Jinder, please go ahead and call the roll for a vote on the February minutes.
Okay, Trustee Cortez.
Aye.
Trustee Duke Hughes,
Aye.
Trustee Fromm, Trustee
Can
Fromm,
you hear us?
Aye.
Trustee Ross,
Aye.
Chair Labresco.
Aye. So the minutes are approved. That wasn't too hard. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is to introduce our wonderful new board member. And what I would suggest actually is, can we have everybody on the current board give 30 seconds on who you are and how you came to San Rafael? And then our board member won't feel quite so on the spot when I ask her to do the same thing. Can we do that? So how about if I start that? My name is Josh. I work in marketing research. I've been living in San Rafael for almost 26 years, which just happens to be when our daughter was born. I've got 2 kids who got old somehow, and I've been using the library since they could read, and I've been on the board for about 4 years. Jamie, you wanna go next?
Sure. Hi, welcome. So I'm Jamie Cortez. I moved to Marin about 8 years ago. I'm originally from LA. I work at the Marin Community Foundation, and I joined the board because when I moved here, I knew no one, and the only place that felt like a community was the library. And I knew they still have seen my daughter grow up, Margaret. Well, used to when we would go in, Margaret. There, so it's I'm really happy to serve and welcome. Excited to have you.
Okay, Claudia, you want to jump in?
Sure. So welcome. Claudia Fromm. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Kentfield, now doing telehealth from home. I joined the board in March of 2019. I grew up pretty much in Marin and have lived in San Rafael for the past 38 years and just am a big library proponent.
That's great. And Rob?
Hi, welcome. I came to San Rafael about 4 years ago after living in Novato and moving back from the East Coast. I've been a fan of the library system for a long time. My mom has worked for the American Library Association, and I'm passionate for education in general as I work for the California State Teachers Retirement System. So welcome, and glad to have you.
Well, that's great. And actually, let's have Henry and Susan introduce themselves briefly as well. Henry, could you do that? Henry, you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Josh. My name is Henry Bankhead. I'm the Assistant Library and Recreation Director for the San Rafael Public Library, Department of Library and Recreation. I've been at the City of San Rafael for 5 years, during which time I have lived in Marin County in San Rafael. I previously worked at the Los Gatos Library and lived in San Jose for 15 years. Thank you.
That's great. And Susan, would you say something as well, please?
Absolutely. Welcome aboard. I'm Susan Andrade Wax. I'm the Director of Library and Recreation. I've been with the city for 2.5 years. Prior to coming to the city of San Rafael, I worked for the city of Pleasanton, cities of Gilroy, city of Santa Clarita, UCLA, cities of Chino Hills, and Claremont. And before that, I was a recreation therapist and I worked in the medical field for 5 years.
Terrific. And I'm not going to go out of my way to leave Jill out, but we're going to hear from her in just a minute. So Adriana, tell us just a little bit about yourself, if you would, and welcome.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for your warm welcome. It's great for me to be here. And yeah, I've lived in San Rafael for about 5 years, relocated from England about 6.5 years ago. And we were relocated to Marin and living in San Rafael for the last 5 years. I spent a lot of my higher education in England for 15 years. I lived there. And when we were looking at a relocation due to work, I am a consultant in a research-based advisory organization and a developmental psychologist. We knew a few friends in San Rafael, and we really loved the community. And having my children, two fourth graders, starting to learn to read, learn to love to read, and the library was an invaluable resource. And I'm also a big proponent of the library, so really excited to be here. And I'm also bilingual. I grew up in Mexico City, so I also love the fact that we are inclusive of many languages in this multicultural city. Please.
Terrific. You'll be a great addition to the board. Thanks for joining us. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to hear about what the library is doing in terms of curbside services, which is a lot, I think. And Jill, maybe just say a quick introduction about yourself too for Adriana before you tell us exactly what you guys are up to.
Sure. So I am, my name is Jill Harris, and I'm a supervising librarian at the downtown library. I've been here, gosh, close to 10 years. I think about 9 years. First as a children's specialist, and now, and then children's supervisor, now as general supervisor. Before that, I worked for the county. I recently moved to San Rafael from San Francisco. I was living there for 12 years and finally moved close to my job so I don't have to commute. I have a daughter, a 3-year-old daughter, and she's awesome. And that's all I really have to say.
So tell us then a little bit about curbside service, what our libraries are up to.
Yeah, so I'm really happy and excited to talk about this. So thank you, board members, for giving me the opportunity to talk about curbside. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides with you all.
Good luck with that.
Right? Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see my desktop now at least?
Yeah.
And slide, or can you see the slides now?
Yeah, I can.
Cool. All right. Threw me off. It looked a little different than it normally does. Okay. So I'm going to talk about library curbside, both at the downtown location and at our Pickleweed Library. Starting with downtown, just because it's a little different the way it works there, but I'll get to Pickleweed. Well, actually, I'm going to present a little video created by Mireya Rodriguez at the Pickleweed Library. So basically how it works is you start off, the public can start off by calling us for an appointment once they have some items ready to pick up that are on hold for them. Or if we have something on the shelf and they want, see that we have it and they want it immediately, they'll go ahead and call us for an appointment. We are currently scheduling appointments for up to 4 people for every 15-minute interval while we're open. This is, for safety, just to keep people from congregating in front of the library, to keep people kind of spaced out, part are, abiding by social distancing rules, wearing masks. So once we've made the appointment, we go ahead and check out the items to the person, just so we don't have to handle their card once they arrive, and we package it up in a nice bag and write the person's pickup appointment and their last name. And we've got them all organized by appointment. And we always have a staff person at the door who keeps an eye out for folks approaching the door. Many of you probably seen our setup in front of the downtown library. We've got tables kind of blocking the sliding glass doors, and we keep the doors shut. We only open it to basically ask the person for their name and appointment, and then slide the items, the already checked out items, to them, just to limit contact and keep both staff and the public safe. We are also accepting returns at this point. There's no appointment needed for that. So when we're open, people can put their returns into one of the barrels we have out front. And when we're closed, then folks can put returns into the book drop that's located in the wall. You can kind of see it behind the blue book drop. And we quarantine all materials that are returned to us for 72 hours before staff even touches them, again, for safety. So there is a 3-day delay before things get checked in off of people's records. For the most part, people understand and are fine with that. So that's been working really well for us, and that's a MarinNet-wide standard. So anything that's also coming to us through the delivery has been quarantined for 3 days before the staff at, you know, each of the respective MarinNet libraries has checked it in and sent it to us. We are taking safety very seriously. So before we opened for curbside, the supervisors all came downtown and kind of strategized about how to keep everybody, you know, that's working in the building at a safe social distance. You know, which desks were going to be in use, which desks we needed to, you know, people we needed to move, which desks we should kind of make unavailable to keep space, placing PPE everywhere, making sure that we had proper PPE. We did a training with all staff, you know, to teach them about the procedures. We do a screening for everybody who enters the building, not just staff, but also, well, staff from other city departments and our delivery driver. Everybody gets screened and temperature checks. And of course, we all wear masks while working in the building. So I'm now going to play a little video created by Mireia, who's going to talk about the Pickleweed Library.
Hola, mi nombre es Mireia y trabajo aquí en la biblioteca Pickleweed. Hoy les voy a platicar de los servicios que ofrece la biblioteca por la acera. Estamos ofreciendo el servicio de citas y puedes llamar por teléfono para venir y recoger tus libros o materiales. También puedes llamarnos por teléfono y hacer una cita. Nuestro número de teléfono es 485-3483. Los esperamos y estamos aquí para servirles. Hello, my name is Mireia and I work here at the Pickleweed Library. Today I'm going to tell you about our curbside service at the Pickleweed Library. You can call us or walk by, make an appointment. We're here to help you. Come and visit. Thank you.
All right. So since opening for curbside on June 3rd, we have circulated about 8,500 items. We have checked in just under 7,300 items. We have filled about 1,800 holds. The downtown library is currently open and has been open 6 days a week since June 3rd. And the Pickleweed Library is open 4 days a week for a total of 60 open hours per week. I believe that we're still, you know, besides I guess of the individual libraries, counting the county locations as individual libraries, we have the most open days per week of any library. There aren't really a lot of other libraries, if any, that are open on Saturdays, so I'm really proud of that. We have answered 192 chats since we've opened, and that's just as of the 10th. I know that actually chat has even ramped up a lot in the past couple days, so I'm sure that updated figure would be even more. And we have provided, as of today, a total of 348 hours of public service. And we are just getting started. And we hope to see you all at our libraries. All right, so next, I'm going to play a little video I created that will give you all a behind the scenes look at what it's like for staff working at the library, at the downtown library. And I want to note that right now, you know, we have a very limited number of temp staff. So everybody, all of our regular hire staff, both downtown and Pickleweed, we are spending, you know, 90% of our days just serving the public, getting them books, checking the books back in, filling holds, with really very little, you know, help from temp staff. So I find that really impressive. I'm really proud of our team. And I'm excited to show you this little behind the scenes peek and into what goes into curbside. All right, so that concludes the visual part of my presentation. And again, I just want to emphasize just the amount of energy and teamwork that goes into curbside service. I'm finding it to be very satisfying work. Of course, I miss doing, more programs and in-person service, but just, in the reality we live in now, it's just so satisfying to be back in the building and providing people with books and other materials, and just seeing everybody come together and do what needs to be done. Everybody's doing the same kinds of work regardless of our title or classification. And it's honestly very inspiring, and I'm really proud to be part of this team, especially now. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share about curbside.
And Jill, we're impressed at how quickly you got everybody on the staff to move there. Your dedication there was very impressive. Who has some questions for Jill? Do we have to raise our hands, or let's go ahead and start talking, and we'll see if it becomes a mess. It looks like Jamie's got one.
Hi, Jill. Well, thanks to you and everyone. This is awesome. I know people are really excited. We were all waiting for the library to do this, so thank you. I was just curious of a few things. So one is, you said the quarantining for 3 days is a MarinNet standard. Is that still the case? I know we've heard all this, research and data, and if, the county office of health has said anything of that. So that's question number one. And the other one I was just curious was, what are the challenges? What have they really been? And everyone's doing work so differently, and I know everyone's appreciative of it, but just curious of staff challenges versus what maybe you've heard from others, library patrons.
Yeah. So your first question regarding the quarantine, so that is not just standard in MarinNet, but it really is pretty much the standard throughout a lot of, I believe, California libraries, if not nationally. That was something that, our leadership, along with city leadership, worked to produce a site-specific plan, as any organization does when they want to reopen any services to the public in a COVID environment. And it just included things like that. We told them about kind of what's going on in our industry and came to an agreement about safe practices. Also, the 72 hours is based on research that was done by a library consulting group about how long the virus actually lives on books. So it's pretty science-based. We really wanted to be, safe, but then also, have things move as quickly as possible while being safe. So it was good to have that data, to have that good balance. And your second question, I think, I'm not exaggerating when I say that staff, seriously, from what I understand, people I've talked to are just feeling very satisfied with this work. And I don't think there's really a lot of challenges with us in terms of teamwork or kind of internally. Of course, we get the occasional grouchy member of the public who wants us to speed up our reopening. They want things to return to the way they were before all of this started, or they have differing views about, about COVID and about, what it means and the realities of it, and question the science of it. And that can be a little difficult sometimes, but again, we're banding together as a team. We've been so good at triaging those things. And, we got up and running, very well-oiled machine. We've got a system that really works well for us, and I'd say works very well for 99% of the people we interact with, who are just super grateful and super happy that we're back.
Who else has a question for Jill? Any other questions for Jill?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I found all the work you're doing and the ability and the willingness of everyone to shift to a new model. That's really impressive. And I also found the numbers impressive, but I'm just curious as to how they compare to pre-curbside, and also how the online numbers compare to pre-curbside, just to get a sense for how the public use the different services, and how they leverage that during the time when many people this is their main activity.
Yeah. So honestly, the circulation we're doing right now is really just a fraction of what we're able to do in person. So it's honestly not that impressive when you compare it to, let's say the circulation we had last year. But I will say that the amount of circulation we're doing is definitely better than what we were doing, March, April, May, June. So we're just excited to at least be back and up and running. And I'm hoping that, as we continue to get more comfortable and refine our processes, that maybe we can accommodate more people per day. In terms of online services, our ebook use all over county, our MarinNet-wide ebook collection has just spiked by an incredible amount. The most recent statistic I've heard that's really impressive is in June, 64% of our total circ all over the county, including, this was after curbside reopened, 64% was ebooks, just Overdrive ebooks, not even including our other ebook collections, Hoopla, anything like that. And so, yeah, that's a huge change. And so we are fulfilling a lot of community need via online, and we'll continue to do so even while curbside is available. And then the other service we have is ZipBooks. So that's something that's been incredibly popular, that is also helping to kind of supplement that need, where there's a limit to what we can provide curbside. We can use ZipBooks, we can use Overdrive, Hoopla, or other online resources.
And some of that we're going to save for the item about the COVID response, which I think
Yes.
we're leading into a little bit, which is coming later. But can I just ask, since 64% ebooks is roughly where we are now, as a comparison point, where would we have been 6 months ago?
It's my understanding is that it's a 75% increase from I think that's either June of this year compared to June of last year, or it's either June compared to the month before we all went on lockdown. I can't remember which the comparison is, but either way, it's like 75% increase.
Sounds good.
But I believe Henry has a lot of those stats too in his report. So
okay.
He'll be more certain about that.
I have one or two questions. Are there any other people who have questions before I do? Okay, I was just going to ask, you're now allowing people to reserve books that are in other libraries, right? And so we're back to transferring across libraries. How is that working?
I would say it's working really well. We, before reopening, MarinNet formed a few, I think 3 different task forces to create recommendations for the MarinNet board on processes for reopening and what should go into the site-specific plans. And then, the leadership used that to form a lot of our processes. And we were able to get the delivery up and running, I think, within the first week or so, at least at our sites. Some of the other MarinNet libraries were a little slower to reopen for that, just because some of them had like construction projects that they'd started during the closure because it was good timing to do so or whatever. But I think it was awesome that we were able to get up and running so quickly. We also had to wait to turn the catalog on for people to place holds until all the MarinNet libraries were ready, because we couldn't really do that piecemeal. But once we did do that, that really streamlined our process too, because we were no longer having to restrict to just things that were in our building. We were getting calls of people who wanted 20 items that were on our shelf because they couldn't place a hold. So that's definitely, that process is refined as the catalog's been turned back on. And really just having those things in place has made it a very smooth process overall throughout the system.
That's great. Now, I also wanted to ask you a tough question probably. We all probably noticed that within the last couple of days, our governor is trying to dial back a little bit on what we can do in our state for good reasons. Have you heard anything about libraries perhaps having to step back? We haven't gone very far ahead yet, but having to step back in terms of what we're allowed to do?
happy to try and answer that with what I know, but if it's okay for Susan or Henry to field that, I
Sure.
think they probably have more information than I do, or maybe more definite. But if yeah,
And
I'm happy
if
to
I can
try.
if I can just ask, related to
Sure.
that, I think if we have had cases among library employees, or if we've had members of the public who say they might have caught COVID at the library, it's much more likely that someone's going to try to dial us back. And I'm not asking for any private information, but if anything like that has happened, that may be a
Yeah. I mean, again, Henry and Susan can get into the specifics. My understanding is that the city has a sort of procedure in place, like a response plan, if depending on the department and their, circumstances, because, people who've returned to work in the different departments have different, circumstances. So we do have a plan in place of what would happen if a staff person was to fall ill. I think if it was a member of the public, then they would identify whether or not they had contact with us through contact tracing. And then I believe that would also be covered by that response plan. And the specifics of that, I think Henry or Susan could get into, because I'm not versed on the exact specifics of that plan.
Henry, you want to jump in?
Sarah Jones, the county librarian, who as part of our MarinNet consortium spoke with the CAO of the county today. And the message is that the county and MarinNet libraries will continue to do curbside pickup under the current health order and wouldn't be restricted by the closure of indoor retail and the mall. So we're good with that. Also, just observing that our curbside pickup is meant to be a contactless interaction with more than 6 feet of social distancing, masks on both of the individuals. So we're seeking to not have contact with the public ongoing and for the near future.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize if I didn't make that clear. We have these tables in front of the door that keep folks at a minimum 6 feet away, usually more. We only open the door just basically as much, the minimum amount needed to slide out the package of things that are already checked out to them. Everybody has to wear a mask. That's, an absolute. And, we basically just open, slide it out, close, and then the person approaches and gets their package off the table. So it really is contactless.
Have we considered doing a pickup like that at Northgate? We'd have to do it from the street side, since I think the mall's about to be closed down, or may be closed down already.
At the moment, I don't think, we definitely have discussed that kind of tentatively and sort of hypothetically. There's probably a staffing issue with that. We have 6 frozen positions, and we are seriously, all the regular hire staff that we have are in the downtown library and at Pickleweed. We're already kind of spending our max amount of time just doing curbside, and then the little time we have left is, continuing to order books and keep kind of a baseline of programs going, like story time. So it's hard to imagine at the moment folding that in. We're hoping that as we get to, possibly bring back more of our temp seasonal staff, that they can, do some backfilling for, covering them all. And yeah, I'm not sure how our discussion about that and our plans for that are altered by the more recent update to the order, since the mall is now closed again for inside shopping.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments for Jill? I think we all probably feel that you guys are doing great. I mean, everybody loves a library in San Rafael, and the fact that you're able to bring it to people in broader ways even than when you started a few weeks ago, I think it's got to be appreciated out there. For those who missed it, the San Francisco Chronicle had an article today on the front page of the B section. It was a column by Heather Knight, I think is her name, about the San Francisco Library and how they're trying to struggle through these various issues. And we're way ahead of where they are. And, so anyway, you guys are doing great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I see applause all around. Yeah, go ahead, Adriana, how am I saying that?
Adriana, it's fine.
Okay.
Just on that point, it occurred to me as I was watching the videos and all that great work, and seeing that, you know, other libraries' efforts are out there in the papers. Are we, you know, publicly sharing the great work? I mean, of course you have with the videos are directed at the public, but just wondering if there's any communications efforts just to, yeah, to share all the great work.
Yes, I know there's been at least one article in the IJ about us, and then also, you know, some of the other MarinNet libraries. I know that, you know, information about what we're doing is promoted through a lot of the other city outlets, you know, such as the snapshot update and the daily update that goes out to the public. And so I know there is definitely an effort to get the word out about that. We have a very robust social media presence on Facebook and Instagram in particular, as well as Nextdoor. So, you know, we're definitely doing our best to get the word out through our channels.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If staff feels it's appropriate to put that high-speed video up on Facebook or something, please go ahead and do it. But that's completely your decision.
We wanted to premiere it for you all and give you first look. But yeah, the plan is to post it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that there might have even been a thing in SF Gate or the Chronicle about Marin Life. I might be wrong about that, but
okay.
Yes.
All right, let's move on. You know, sometimes we have visitors at our meetings. I don't see anybody else who isn't on the board or anyone else calling in, but I should just say, if anyone has comments about things that are not on the agenda, you know, as board members, you probably know that those would most likely go into future agenda topics. But is there anything pressing that you just want to be sure to mention?
I believe that public comment now is for the presentation given by Jill, and Jinder will read the script.
Okay, but we don't have any public. So
we don't have any attendees currently, so I don't think I need to read the script.
I agree with
okay.
that.
So each item will have its separate public comment. Okay.
Okay, fair enough. A little different today. Okay, well then I think we can probably move on to the next item on the agenda, which is related, and that is the library's response to COVID-19. And you guys have done a very detailed report on this. Thank you for taking the time to do that. So take it away, Henry and or Susan.
Thank you, Chair Libresco. I will now give the presentation about the library COVID-19 response and service modifications. This is what we did during the period immediately before what Jill talked about, which started on June 3rd. So this is the period from the initial shelter in place, March 16th to June 3rd. I'm now going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Yes, okay, good. So as I said, the shelter in place happened on March 16th. We actually had all staff kind of in the building at that point, trying to figure out what we would do. And then we were all sent home. And then the next day we all started working virtually. It's kind of an amazing transition for the library to quickly move to a remote environment. And our kind of predilection for technology, I think, helped us in that transition. And in the background is that the public health crisis precipitated a health order. And then that meant that we were all working virtually from that key date of March 16th to June 3rd, by my estimation, 10 weeks. Again, our transition to remote work, I thought, was pretty seamless. That is largely due to the fact that all of our librarians and many of our senior library assistants who are paraprofessionals already had laptops provided by our organization. And then we happen to have a lot of technology on hand, including Chromebooks and other laptops that we use for 3D printing and other projects that we're able to distribute. And here's a brief overview of what we did during the shutdown. And I think it's universally accepted across the state and nation that libraries went kind of through a virtual renaissance during this period. But that's not the only thing that we did. So here we go. So the first item, I think, is our pre-existing use of a chat reference service. We're the only library in Marin that allows users to chat with us from a widget on our website. And this allowed us to kind of supplement the lack of the phone service, the lack of the in-person service, with kind of the next best thing, which was immediate help by text for people that were kind of trying to respond to the crisis, get into their library account, wanted to know more about ebooks. This was also a very useful internal tool for chat for our staff, in that we had a chat room already set up where staff could actually share information about the questions that were coming in, about meetings that were going on, and we could all talk internally in a very seamless way. The service was offered in English and Spanish, and we would, and we have the ability to transfer questions from the public between users. So if someone came in speaking Spanish, we transferred to a Spanish user. It's a very well thought out piece of technology, which the way it functions is as one of us takes the chat, and it tells everyone else that it's been taken by that person. So it allows multiple sort of peer-to-peer collaboration. And you see it with the graph on the lower left, before the shutdown, very low usage of chat. After the shutdown, skyrocketing usage. In a related way, the entire city went into EOC mode, which means Emergency Operations Center. And we all have accounts by default in Microsoft Teams, which is a sort of Zoom competitor, based on our Windows login and our Windows profile. And this also allowed us to do internal secure video conferencing between each other. It works on mobile. The picture there is from Jill using it on a mobile device. And it was very useful for the continual meetings via video conferencing that would normally be Zoom links or other products. It integrates with Outlook and everything we use. We're all using OneDrive, which is a sort of Gmail-like product from Microsoft. So this really made it like work for us. We would be using this on a daily basis for multiple meetings. It's still going on right now. I should point out that at least half of the city is still staffing a virtual emergency operations center, which I'll talk more about later. We also had the ZipBooks program before the shutdown, which is a grant-funded, state library grant-funded program. It initially was for rural libraries in order to deliver books that people couldn't get through their regular library service. So if a book wasn't in your library, you could order it through the library. It'd be delivered by Amazon directly to you, and then you'd return it to the library, and we would either add it to the collection or give it to the friends of the library or another library that wanted it. During the shutdown, this was the only way people could really get physical books. So we saw usage skyrocketing. It was initially kind of a low usage. We would allow people to request books through our ZipBooks program if we didn't have it in the library. But since the library was shut down, they could suddenly request that bestseller through this program. So the state library kind of relaxed the parameters, and usage skyrocketed from like 35 requests per month pre-shutdown to more like 280, 250. So it was really kind of convenient that we already had this program. We had some feedback. Some people are not really excited about Amazon, and I'm on the steering committee for this program at the state level, and we've been continuously looking for other providers, possibly working with local bookstores. But really the Amazon supply chain really worked well for us in this. In this instance, we actually ran out of the state funds. The friends of the library supplemented us, and then there was a second round of funding from the state, which was awesome. And we were able to, after reducing the number of zip books you could request, increase it back again to 5. So we went from like 3 to 5 to 2 and back to 5. So it's still happening, still exciting. We also have been for the past several years looking at lending MiFi Hotspots. We're not currently lending them, but we did a project with San Rafael City Schools and the Marin County Free Library. There was some funding from the Marin Community Foundation, I think, that allowed us to purchase as a group. The county purchased some, we purchased some, the San Rafael City Schools purchased some MiFi Hotspots to be distributed to students and to supplement their ability to do online learning. We purchased 150 hotspots. We handed them off to the school, they distributed them. And then what we're hoping to do is create a kind of link with the library and its resources by then checking those out to the students on their library account if they have one. And if they don't, we would sort of fold them into our library card drive and kind of give them a card. We also were one of the partners in the Canal Wireless project that you may have heard about. It was headed up by Rebecca Woodbury and our Digital Services and Open Government group, working with Canal Alliance and Marin County. The idea is to create a free Wi-Fi network in the canal centered around the Pickleweed Library. It's not actually using the same network, but we're looking at using the same network provider possibly. We participated in the policy and the technical conversations. This project has received national recognition, and it's really raised a lot of enthusiasm for what you can do to kind of span the digital divide and support the community in getting access to bandwidth that normally is kind of like very expensive, hard to get. So it's an ongoing project, but we're excited to be a partner. We also have an older adults program where we actually do outreach with a group of volunteers to older adults in the community, where the volunteers bring books to either the adult's home or the facility that they're living in. That was not possible during the shutdown, so we did a mailing to all of our outreach customers, just letting them know about the Zip Books program. We followed up individually with patrons who might have some trouble placing Zip Book orders. And this is because the homebound older adults are kind of a vulnerable population during a shelter in place. And we felt that that was a very successful program. Generally, our online programming during the shutdown was a time where we truly shined as a library. I think both like internally, the staff were very creative in coming up with things that would work online, converting story time to Facebook Live, doing special events for families, programs for school-age kids. We did a teen program, and then we converted some of our book groups to online book groups. Here's some of the marketing for those programs. The story time with Jill and her daughter, and Alejandra and her daughter, was particularly heartwarming. And we did that on a week, was that 2 times a week on Facebook Live, and then people that weren't there during the live could see it later. We did a lot of live and also asynchronous programs where we would create content with a pre-recorded video that we could put on our social media, and people could get that in-person feel that they were missing during the shutdown. Here's the artwork for the pint-sized story time. Speaking of, I mentioned our library card project. We have a pre-existing library card drive project with the San Rafael City Schools where we get a data dump and create library cards for everyone in the district and then hand out physical cards. We were in the midst of doing the same program with Miller Creek School District when the shutdown happened. So we quickly converted that to a virtual program by, instead of using the library card number printed on the cards that we buy that are in the back room, we substituted in the database the student ID of the student. So they would know, okay, they know their student ID and they know the PIN number that we assigned them. I forgot what it was. Then they would be able to access our online resources without having the physical card, which was very convenient. As with the San Rafael City Schools, we created an MOU for this program that protects the privacy between the information about the students. The sharing of that information is protected, and the school board approved it, the city manager approved it, and it's kind of ongoing, a very successful model, because what we used to do is each student would fill out a form and then someone had to process that form, create the card. So it increases efficiency by like orders of magnitude. And we're just finishing up an update for our San Rafael City Schools library card drive. This is what we did besides doing all the awesome library stuff during the shutdown. A number of our staff were involved in the emergency response. As part of the Emergency Operations Center, there's a standardized set of departments like across all emergency response incidences, whether it's earthquake, fire, COVID, shutdown. And in this case, it's a virtual EOC. There's operations, logistics, PIO. Those were the ones that we were a part of, which is unusual for one organization, one division library to be part of 3 different elements of the EOC. But
Sorry, Henry, what is PIO?
Oh, Public Information Officer. So the PIO it's very important to speak to the media with one voice. So all media inquiries go to the PIO. Jill Tokotomi was an awesome member of the PIO team, helping with press releases and citywide communications, social media. Jamie Poirier, one of our supervising librarians, as is Jill Tokotomi, was part of the Care and Shelter group under operations, working with people experiencing homelessness. She was instrumental in putting together the Great Plates program to provide meals for older adults. And I was part of the logistics team, working with alternative work assignments to get people working remotely in the right kind of jobs and some non-remote, and coordinating supplies to those who need them, namely the mask donations, which I'll show something about right at the next slide. Besides our Emergency Operations Center staff, we had a number of staff working as disaster service workers. Everyone who's a government employee can be called upon to become a disaster service worker during an emergency. So some of our people were working on the mask donation project, which basically was an appeal to the community to create and donate masks to us, which were then put in the library book drops, and we would collect them, wash them, and distribute them to people experiencing homelessness or other areas of the city first responders that needed cloth masks. We were also able to get some nice larger donations from some clothing manufacturers in the city, which was awesome. A number of our bilingual staff did translation as disaster service workers from English to Spanish and also English to Vietnamese, both for documents and for web content. 2 staff members, Margaret Stowawi and Jennifer Kiefer, were founding members of the Calling Older Adults project, which was part of the Neighbor to Neighbor initiative. There were a large number of older adults on the voter rolls. We use the voter rolls to find their numbers. I think over 800, over 90. and then they went over 80, over 70, over 60. Margaret and Jennifer then transitioned to the census project, helping to set up some phone banking with Canal Alliance. And we moved 4 more library staff, 5 I think, into the Calling Older Adults project, and 5 or 6 childcare staff were also involved in that, where basically they just have a list of phone numbers and names and a script to call and check on the older adults to see if they're okay. Is there anything they need? Some of them needed masks, possibly. A lot of them were perfectly fine. Some of them were either in facilities or not. So it was kind of a nice sort of outreach and kind of caring about the community program, which was very successful. Another thing we did was called Libros for our Familias. We had a lot of free books that we had gotten from Copperfields as a donation. We would generally have provided those as prizes during summer reading, and instead we provided them to students in book packs that you see Jill making during the meal distribution at Bahia Vista and Vallecito elementary schools. So those were well appreciated. The county library, Marin County Free Library, did a similar program that they spoke about, I think, before the Board of Supervisors. Another thing that was very nice, a nice kind of, something that happened somewhat unexpectedly was during our shutdown, we had a ton of time for staff development. Like many libraries across the nation started doing webinars and online classes about things that they were discovering. And we were able to access those in a way that we couldn't in the past because of just, there were so many of them happening and so many of them were free or very low cost. A lot of them were related to the COVID-19 response as libraries were transitioning to different sort of experiences across the country. Some libraries, even in California, started curbside in like March. But we could kind of see and learn and share with each other through the online staff development using Zoom and other like video conferencing technologies. And what we're doing is developing the new normal, which is we're still doing. So that's awesome, and that's still happening. But since we went back into curbside, we had to do an all hands on deck back to the building to make this curbside thing happen. I think Jill mentioned this. She alluded to that. We have staff that normally wouldn't really be involved in the physical circulation of books doing that like full time. We rely on a huge group of temporary staff to do the kind of reshelving of the books, putting them on the hold shelf, pulling them from the shelf, sometimes checking things in. And because we no longer have the temporary staff working, or only a few of them, we also have some open positions, which I'll talk about in the budget thing. We really had to call everyone back from virtual work to make the curbside happen here at downtown and at Pickleweed. That was about the extent of what we could do. We thought about the mall, but really we didn't want to overextend ourselves. And arguably, you know, we're offering more curbside hours than any library in Marin, so maybe we've already done that. But I think that it's really it's really useful for customers because we're a central location where people can both drop off and pick up books, unlike Bolinas or Simpson Beach or like Larkspur less. So it's working really well. And that concludes my presentation.
Cool. Let's see. Somehow I lost everybody's picture. I've got your presentation, but that's it.
Does Josh now ask each person for questions? Is that the script?
Yeah, I can do that better though if I can get your pictures back up, and I've still got Henry's presentation. Oh, there we go. I guess that was a gender thing. Who has questions or comments? I don't think we have to go in order. I mean, there aren't very many of us, so raise your hand if you want to ask Henry a question. Yeah, Jamie.
Hi, Henry. Well, first of all, nice to see your face, and congrats to all this work. I was actually looking up the mission again when you were talking because I just found what you're doing and what the whole team is doing really innovative and inspiring. So thank you, and thanks for your leadership in this. And it really shows that the library is not just about books; it's really about building community, and all of your work to do that is really impressive. So thank you. I had some questions. I was really really happy to hear about the work you're doing with the Wi-Fi or MiFi hotspots and helping with the digital divide and Pickleweed, but we know that many of the students now had to turn in like their Chromebooks or their laptops back to the schools. And so I'm wondering if you've heard from community members or anything else like that in regards to, not being able to have access or use anymore. I mean, if they don't have computers, the hotspots don't really, matter or have access to that. And so that was one question. My other question, I was really, I'd love to hear, maybe we don't have to talk about it now, but I would love to hear, the Miller Creek School District project with the virtual library cards, my daughter's in that, and I didn't hear anything about it. Was it just for a certain age group? I was curious about. And then and I don't know if you want me to just I only have 3 questions, but I don't know if I should just do them all or want to do them separately. But the only other thing I was interested in was like thinking, I think Jill had mentioned something, or maybe it was Henry, I don't remember, but like the 3D printing, like, is there a thought that maybe people could order the 3D prints and then you guys would do that whole curbside pickup too? I was wondering if there's any thought about that. I know that was really popular for a long time. So those are my 3 questions. But again, I mean, I know everyone's doing so much, and the EOC and all that. So I know working from home, kids, and I'm sure we all know how overwhelming it is. So just even doing what you're doing, I just still say thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. I've got answers. So as far as the hotspots and whether the student had their school issued a Chromebook, we really, in the hotspots program, just kind of deferred to the school district and provided them to the school district, and they're driving it. So while we have been thinking about, that it would be cool for public computing to lend our own Chromebooks, or to actually lend the hotspots, I think the most significant thing is the county working with us has sort of committed to somewhat of a longer term use of the MiFi. But we have sort of deferred to the school district to be kind of in charge of it. And that's something I could kind of send to the technology person. So like, I think what happened was there was a desperate kind of scramble to get them out before the end of school. And that happened, school's over, everyone's kind of recovering. And so whether they go now is somewhat unknown. But that is a very good point.
Yeah, I would love to have continued, since you're at the table, love to hear more continued communication, conversations about helping to continue, accessing services through the summer. But I'll also bring it to my school board, so thank you.
Okay. Miller Creek School District, my daughter is also a member. I noticed she got a card. What was supposed to happen was an opt-out form if you didn't want one. And so that's how the other partnership with San Rafael City Schools worked. We didn't really get a lot of opt-outs, but I think, again, it may have been lost in the shuffle when COVID happened, that it was just on the cusp of kind of being announced and kind of implemented. So sorry if we missed that piece, but I think generally, we could do some catch up to kind of say, that this happened. If you don't want a card, we can work with you. And then the 3D printing, I actually brought that up at the MarinNet board meeting as something we could possibly do as a curbside thing. Thank you for reminding us. During the shutdown, there was a huge kind of 3D printing focus on PPE, like printing masks and face shields. I did these face shields from the Budman project, Budman face shields, where you actually order this Mylar piece and it fits into the holder. And we have deployed these for some of our staff.
Cool.
But using using the program the way we used to do it would work for curbside if we're able to kind of expand that way. And I think we've been kind of breaking ground on that, and that's a good reminder that would be an easy service to implement when we do. Like Larkspur was doing craft pickups, so yes.
Well, thanks, Henry.
Who else has a question for Henry? Yeah, Claudia.
So just to piggyback on Jamie's comments, really impressive all the things that all of you have done during this time. I had a question. Is there money still left from the state to do more zip books? If so, I was thinking, I know a number of my friends, when they heard about the zip books, they wanted not to get books for themselves, but to, especially with summer, get some books and donate them to some summer school, well, not summer school, but summer programs or communities that needed books. So would that be a possibility? You can't hear me.
That would not be within the parameters of the current grants. It's meant to supplement directly to the library user and then go back to the library.
Yeah, but
yeah,
you could go back. They could borrow them and go back to the library, right?
Yeah, individually they could totally do that.
Right.
Like it's open season. I thought you meant like as a kind of bulk order to.
No. Just, I mean,
okay.
There are still funds we could use it in that manner. Rather than me ordering books, I could order books, and the caveat being that they'd need to be returned to the library.
Yes, the funding was an interesting story. We kind of ran out of money around April something, I think. There was extra funding because we are a very good user of funds in the state program. Sometimes other libraries don't spend all their money. The ones that were closed might not have been doing zip books. We do zip books in a very efficient way. Shout out to Jinder, he is our zip book coordinator. Mm-hmm. Other libraries will have like 5 people doing this, and we have one person that's very efficient. So the Friends supplemented us right at the end. And then there was more funding from the state starting the fiscal year, and that should continue just through the end of the next fiscal year. The governor removed the funding from the current budget, so unless that changes, this would be the last year for zip books. And at some point it will probably go back to you can only request zip books that we don't have in the library catalog. So all the like popular stuff, since we have it, you can't order it. And usually Jinder would check the orders and say, I'm sorry that this John Grisham book is available in the library, so you can't request it. But we're very flexible with the zip books.
Who else has a question?
Can I add one little thing to that too? Just really quick, the nice thing about curbside is that we can actually serve like local school groups, daycare, summer groups with our existing collection, and we actually already have filled some orders, of 30 to 50 books, whatever the teachers or group, leaders need to borrow for the school group. So that is the main way that we can do that right now.
Okay. Yeah, Jamie.
This is probably an annoying question. I'm sure you get it from all the users, so I'll just add in. But that's a good question, Jill. So like when you order books, I know I've heard this problem that, if you're ordering 5 books and like 2 come in and they go on hold, but then your other 2 don't come for a while. Is there a way in the system to kind of group your order rather than, some are on hold and you have to pick it up within 3 days and the other ones are on hold, or has it been more streamlined? My question makes sense?
I'm happy to answer that. I don't know if, is it okay to answer that since it's not
Sure, go ahead.
the agenda item? Yeah, so people, you know, we have so many things going in and out. We can't really keep track of people's individual things like that. Sometimes, you know, on an individual call, if somebody's calling and saying, oh, I have 2 items on hold, and we notice they have some other stuff in transit, we'll say, oh, you know, I see you have some stuff on its way. So when you get the notification, call us back, or maybe if you want to wait for all the things to arrive. But you know, if somebody's stuff comes in, there's really not a way for us to do that right now. So we just try to catch those when we can. But it is really up to people to, you know, if more items come in, to call us when they get the notification and ask to add those to their order. But it's definitely something to think about for our process, if there's a way that we can do that and make that more efficient and convenient for our customers.
I believe that you could pause all your holds from the BiblioCommons end, and once they're all paused and you're at the top of the line, you could release them all, and there would be more likelihood they'd all come at once.
Okay.
You know, if this temporary crisis turns into the new normal for a year or more, we'll have to figure some of those things out. We don't expect you to figure them all out right now, but these are, you know, kinds of things to make note of and see if they come up a lot, I think. Henry, I had a couple of questions for you. One is, in your written report, you mentioned in several places that you got this meeting was well attended, or that one had a ton of people, and I was wondering if you could give us some numbers as opposed to just general well attended. I'm not trying to stick you here for exact numbers. I just kind of want to get a feel for what it's like to have online story time or online reading groups as opposed to in person, which we've talked about in the past. Can't hear you.
But we had some numbers for online program attendance, and I made a little chart in the slide from the slideshow. I can show that to you. Here we go. Sharing screen. So for example, online attendance in March was like between 200 and 250. In April, it went above 300. May, like 250. So while not as sort of bulky as an aggregate when we're doing in-person programs all over the place, you know, we felt like the looking at the hits on the website and the views and the live attendees, that the online story time was by far one of our most popular programs.
Yeah, I saw that chart when you presented it, but you didn't break out the online story time compared to the teen group or whatever. So I was just kind of wondering what magnitude we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the aggregate of all the programs.
I can say, you know, usually live, we didn't get, most of the views were of the recorded ones, which is why when we actually decided, when close to reopening, to turn one of our weekly, we were doing 2 weekly live story times, we turned one of them into a pre-recorded, just because we were finding most of the views were after the live recording. That said, we, you know, during the actual broadcast, we'd get some really nice comments and likes and things like that from the public and have that bit of interaction. You know, and then I would say, you know, overall, just looking at the stats on Facebook of like real views, because Facebook gives you these numbers that are based on like how many people just scroll past, and those are like crazy inflated. But just looking at the number of people who actually like watched, had a sustained watch of it, it was usually about 50 to 80 people per video.
That's great.
Yeah, and just like an anecdote, you know, it is hard to kind of, you know, as somebody who's delivering some of those story times, it's a little hard. You're like broadcasting, and you're just like, is anybody watching this? You know, like you're just there. It helped to have my daughter there because she was sort of my audience in a way and my co-host. But one little anecdote that helped me to kind of feel the impact in the community was that I was out on one of our little many walks around the block that we did during the like height of the like, you know, nothing was open at all. And we were at an intersection and somebody stopped in their car at the light. And as we were crossing, they said, "Hey, story time lady, library family." So that was really sweet. And it made me feel like, okay, people are tuning in. People are out there engaging with this.
That's great. I wanted to ask also, building on somebody's question about Chromebooks in the summer and how we keep summer reading going, are we doing any kind of outreach to our homeless customers who often spend a lot of time in the library when the library's open, and partly they want a warm or a cool place to sit, but partly they read the newspapers or the magazines or maybe read some books. And I wonder if there's any way to let them know that they can read things online or they can pick up books or whatever. I don't claim to have solutions to all the problems for the homeless, but it'd be nice if you're giving them masks anyway, if you could also give them a card or something that says, "We're open for books, you know, call us up and reserve a book," or go to this website on your phone if you have a phone, and you can read the newspaper. Are we doing anything like that?
The extent that we're the mask donation work and Jamie's work with Care and Shelter, we're working with Lynn Murphy. We're not promoting access to books. I think that one of the projects we were looking at was maybe providing some charging stations, but that really never transpired. But the extent of what we're doing is supporting Lynn Murphy with the masks, and but you make a good point. We could include with the masks some a marketing opportunity that we've been missing. Thanks.
Okay. Any last things for Henry on this, and then we can move on to some of the financial issues. All right, I think we're all just unbelievably impressed with what all of you folks are doing. So thank you so much. Okay, next item. Sorry, is there something else?
I have a very quick comment. Just, I am very impressed, and particularly how you've reached out to the different age groups. Different people have different challenges in these times. So the reaching out to the elderly and families, but particularly because the spring was hard for schools and school-age children and their parents. And the fall is likely to be also difficult. I think the role of the library liaising with the schools, but also that direct outreach will be essential for, you know, students to not lose their reading ability, all their great skills that it's going to be harder to maintain given the situation. So I was glad to see that focus. Thank you.
I think we all now feel that teachers are way underpaid, and maybe librarians too. Okay, next item on the agenda has to do with budget. You've all received quite a few pages, I think, about what the city is doing and thinking about, as well as this lovely spreadsheet at the end. It looks better in color, but I printed that out in smaller print than I can really read. But give us a little report on where the city stands and how it's going to affect the library, please. Is that a Henry thing again?
Yes, thank you, Chair Libresco. I will now present the fiscal year 2021 library budget update. A couple of comments before we start. Usually we provide a quarterly update based on the fiscal year that starts July 1st and ends June 30th. So that shows our expenditures with regard to the budgeted line items. We're not doing that right now, but we're using a very similar format that we usually would provide that update in. just so you're kind of familiar with that. So the spreadsheet that Josh mentioned is meant to call out the parts that we cut. Because unfortunately, our city, our civic entity, the city of San Rafael, as opposed to the county of Marin, we rely on sales tax. The county more property tax, with the shutdown, sales tax highly affected, and that's what I'm going to talk about and how it affected and it continues to affect and will affect in the future the library's budget. But just this is like different than what we normally do, and kind of everything we're doing now is like that, but I just want to make sure you understood that. Now I will share my screen. Okay. All right. Can everyone see that? Yes?
I can, yes.
Okay, cool. So fiscal year 2021 library budget update. This report represents the adopted library budget for fiscal year 2021 from July 1st through June 30th. It's different from prior years because COVID-19 has created a substantial and significant budget deficit, not only for the past fiscal year, but for the coming fiscal year we're in, and those effects will have lasting impacts. So beyond probably this coming fiscal year. This is from a report to City Council in May, I believe, maybe April. Over the next 16 months, the city will experience reductions in revenue of approximately $12 million. In response to that, the city implemented the following cost-cutting measures in the chart below, and I will tell you how those affect the library, and developed a comprehensive COVID-19 economic recovery plan that is known as SERP and was attachment 1 in your budget, in your packet. Attachment 2 is the spreadsheet that I mentioned earlier. So number 1 is hiring freeze. So the city implemented a hiring freeze. The library, unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon how you want to look at it, had 6 open positions at the time, actually 5, and someone left during the shutdown to go and work in another industry. So we have 2 librarian positions open, 2 full-time librarian positions, 2 full-time senior library assistant positions, 2 part-time library assistants, and a library aide. So the library has been kind of affected greatly. That's a significant portion of our full-time equivalent, or FTE. The city also had a voluntary retirement separation program where there's an incentive for people to retire, people who are eligible and vested in the retirement program. A number of city employees, maybe 10, I'm not sure of the exact number, took advantage of that. No one in the library did. But that was something that happened. Actually, the deadline has passed. We are all experiencing furloughs. We meaning all non-public safety employees will be furloughed for 13 calendar days in the coming year, which is equivalent to a 5% pay reduction. And then there's additional budget reductions, which I will go into more specifically, that have affected the library in a somewhat significant way. So as a preparation for those additional budget reductions, each department and each division within our department, which is Library and Rec, which has 2 divisions, Library and Recreation, library was asked to come up with budget cutting scenarios of 2.5%, 5%, and 10%. And just a little background on that, last year we cut our non-personnel expenses by 5%. So this year the low-hanging fruit, as it were, maybe had already been taken, but we were creative and we came up with the scenarios. Luckily, we were instructed that our budget would be reduced by the lowest percentage, 2.5%, or slightly over $75,000. We like to say that we gave it the office, in that this is probably because we have so many open positions that there's less need for us to give more in forms of additional budget cuts, because those 6 open positions, which are benefited positions, are a significant kind of reduction in the overall city budget. The reductions that we did make, which are called out in your spreadsheet, included travel and training, office supplies, contractual services, audio and visual materials, and books and publications. So in as far as the collection goes, we cut about 31,000. Just to note that this was from the general fund budget, which is 3/4 of the library's budget of slightly over $4 million. Which is about $3 million. The $1 million odd from Measure D, which is the property tax assessment for Santa Fe City residents that goes directly to the library, was not affected. We are lucky, though, that a number of items that were somewhat reduced or cut in the general fund also have line items in Measure D that we can draw upon in the next fiscal year. For example, collections were reduced from 45,000 to 15,000 in the general fund budget, but we retain 140,000-ish in the Measure D budget for collection. So with what was left in the general fund, we still have 150 spend, which is a healthy amount. And we have not spent a lot on collections. Actually, nothing was spent during the shutdown. There was a spending freeze, just FYI. The budget reduction is 76,000, and that's 2.5% of the general fund budget. We don't anticipate that will mean significant cuts in operations, but we are cutting back where we can, because we actually can't do as much as we used to with 6 open positions. We're going to do less programming. We're focusing on core services, and we are unable to really use our budget in the way, our staffing and budget in the way that we used to, because of the shelter-in-place order and the public health crisis with COVID-19. For example, having more than X amount of people in the building in the staff areas is dictated by our ability to socially distance workplaces and protect everyone in the building, even when we're not allowing public into the building. Additionally, as the city revenues become more clear, and it may be required that the city implements additional budget cuts and possible reductions in force, also known as layoffs, may be necessary in the coming fiscal year. But a lot is unknown at this point. But we do know that our budget has been reduced 2.5%. Next steps, we'll be trying to continue to innovate our services in the new budget environment. For example, travel and conference was eliminated because we're not really going to be traveling in the near future, but we retain some training budget in Measure D. We plan to still buy both electronic and physical materials that will be useful for curbside and for access virtually, which again, the virtual branch of MarinNet, the ebook portal through Overdrive, supplemented by our streaming service from Canopy and Hoopla, have skyrocketed, and the virtual branch is the most popular at this point. And as the county health office allows, we'll continue to explore new ways of adding additional services and programs. For example, the possible pickup of 3D printed objects at the curbside. And that ends my presentation.
I have to leave, as I informed Susan and I'm Chair, so I apologize for that.
You have any comment before you go, or you're over now?
I don't. I actually, as credit to what everyone else on the board has said. I think the library has done an incredible job to the community, and you know, I just think it's impressive how we're like the leader, you know, in Marin basically, and who knows how much further, certainly San Francisco. So really proud to be be a trustee for this library. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks for coming, Rob. And for Adriana, we generally try to end around 7:45. So these even online, these are not 4-hour meetings. we'll wrap up pretty soon. Can I just make one comment before opening up for questions? I'm stunned that the city and the library haven't had bigger cuts. I figured with the economy basically dead, you know, the city's projecting a $12 million hole. I would have thought it would be more like 30 million, and for the library more than $76,000. So I was just thinking we'd see bigger losses, and hope you don't have too many in the future. But do you get a sense of what the future looks like?
Well, no, not really. We're assessing ongoing. The full budget picture continues to evolve as you know, other departments that rely on revenue, that's still picking up, like recreation relies on revenue, community development. So it's really kind of an ongoing work in progress. And, you know, we're kind of lucky that we're not revenue producers, because, you know, it's a little more clear. We're also lucky that we have the Measure D money, which without that, I think it would be a very, very different picture. So the hiring freeze, I think, is the most significant piece that currently has reduced our ability to do the added value type of things. So we're, I think, gonna have to focus on core services without as much kind of like, it's less frosting, more cake, you know, kind of more like the solid center of what we do, less sort of being able to do all kinds of additional things, because we tend to just never say no to anything. So we're going to have to kind of focus on the core services, especially with those open positions, and the need to focus on the really kind of running the place, which would usually happen like on lower level on the org chart. And so like I'm running around grabbing books. So it's like, we're all kind of like, I say we're kind of like camping. It feels like camping. So, you know, like we're kind of making it up as we go, but we have a solid model that's working right now with the curbside. So we'll be building upon that. So
I think it's also important to note, if we had a healthy budget right now, if we had all the money in the world, the service impacts that you're seeing have nothing to do with the budget. They have everything to do with COVID and what we're allowed to do for right now. So a lot of people have asked us all over, like, oh, I can see the service cuts or the program cuts in all the different departments, but what they're actually seeing are the restrictions in place that prevent us from doing it. It has nothing to do with the budget right now.
That's a great point. I mean, at some point, if we have bigger budget cuts for our city, you know, someone's going to say you can't have a 7-day library, or you can't consider reopening Northgate or whatever. But first, we have to get through the COVID issues, I think. Who else has questions or comments? Yes, Jamie.
So Henry, what are some of the frosting items that you, for lack of a better word, think that are not going to happen is one question, and then, or shifted, I guess. And the other question was, I know we had talked right before we were leaving, or we got quarantined and had stopped our meetings, was about library fines. And, you know, I was on for, you know, eliminating them. I know that there was still conversation about research. I know that that's way on the other side now. But just curious if, I know this is not, it just, as we're looking at overall what you're doing, and now doing all this curbside checkout, are fines eliminated?
Good question. I'll take the last question first. We are part of a master fees study for all the fines and fees in the city, and we're recommending removing library fines. We've actually budgeted for that, which is awesome, because you can't really get rid of fines without replacing that revenue, and we've learned that. That's not happening right now. During the shutdown, all of MarinNet generally has been forgiving fines, because we asked everyone to keep their books and then they were unable to return them. As a group, we've renewed all those initially checked out items to September 1st.
Okay.
So currently we're in the fine-free zone, and we're part of a larger study to get rid of fines, and we budgeted for it. So I feel a sense of success there. The frosting items, it's hard to say, but we basically are cutting back on programming to not sort of everything under the sun, but to kind of what is vital. Because really, a lot of our librarians are kind of like mad scientist innovators, ordering and kind of waving their hands in the air. They're now like running back and forth, pulling orders and shuffling books around. And so we have less bandwidth for sort of like the Imagineering piece of what we do. And so cognizant that we have to do less, which is very hard for us, that we've decided to start with a sort of programming centric reduction. We already actually are behind in our book ordering by a huge margin. But we're also kind of trying to be more efficient. But yeah, I would say that the programming piece is the most significant reduction that we've identified so far.
Well, my view on that is keep whatever programs you can for kids, because schools are certainly having, without schools open, the kids are losing a lot of opportunities. So we can do without an adult book group or two, at least that's my view, if you can continue to do as much as you can for our kids. Anybody else have a comment or question for Henry?
Just very quickly, you mentioned a couple of the things that are affected. One is increasing the collection or purchasing books, and the other one is staff to help do more things. So on the purchasing books, and these are things that you probably are already doing, but just curious. I see a lot of people posting, on social media that they're selling their kids' books or, old books, or giving them out for free. I wonder if there's already something in place to say, hey, donate them to the library. We'll send you a badge or something.
Very good question. So counterintuitively, donated books actually cost us money. Mm-hmm. And we do have a great sort of degree of access to donations that go to the friends of the library, and we try to be very selective on taking books from them that may already have requests on them and then kind of integrating into collection. But the reason that is less of a kind of benefit than it might seem is that we order our books through a vendor pre-processed with the barcode, the spine, everything that's done, like we've outsourced that, and it's very efficient. So to do it in-house actually costs somewhat more. But even more importantly, like we're very specific on what we buy with regards to what the reading sort of patterns are, what the requests are, what's happening within the kind of field, and to strain out what is kind of donated is like kind of an additional burden. And we're actually trying to and I used to be one of these people that went through the donations and like add this, add that, and we have to kind of like suppress that kind of, or at least control that kind of impulse in the kind of deference to kind of the efficiency of the process of ordering specific things and being more mindful of serving the entire community, and getting all these kind of donations is like a burden for us. for example, we used to take donated magazines and repurpose them in the lobby, and people, it was a clearinghouse. They bring the magazine, they take the magazine. And we ended up having to police that, take out magazines. So we just got rid of that. So unfortunately, no, not that, you don't see that so much of a solution per se. But funding to buy books, yes.
I mean, really, the most useful, the best way that donations can benefit the library is via the friends, you know, because they can sell the donations and then that funding, you know, is available to us for collections.
Yeah, they take that and the straw and they weave it into gold. So they take the donated books, they sell them, and they give us the money. So we have like a charitable arm that does that.
And it really is counterintuitive. When I first started working in libraries, I just see these great donations that come in and just think, why aren't we adding these? But it seriously does cost more if you consider the staff time, making things shelf ready. And especially, you know, we get a really drastic discount through our vendor. You know, we're basically paying wholesale for books. So, you know, And for
the barcoding service. Sounds great. Thank you.
You know, given the time, unless there's anything critical, I'd like to just move on to quick staff reports. Anything else on budget that just has to be said today? Okay, well, Henry, if I could just ask under these, we could probably skip the board reports and comments on any other meetings the board's been to, right? Or is there anything critical that anyone wants to mention? Okay, we're gonna skip that. In terms of staff reports and comments, Henry, we're gonna trust you here to tell us if there's anything critical in these 7 items. You don't have to tell us, you know, nothing much is going on for most of them. Are there any critical things that we should hear now?
The foundation has met twice, I think, and they're assembling their the alternative to the fundraising dinner they usually have in the fall. So they're working on what they'll do instead of that in the COVID time. The San Rafael Public Library Foundation, a 401(c) specifically dedicated to raising money for the new San Rafael Library. They have a kind of a public appeal mailer and dinner usually that happens like in October, affected by the PSPS last year, the Public Service Safety Shutoff. So that's what they're working on. The MarineNet board has been working together to react to the crisis as a collective. We work together to kind of allow the initial deployment of curbside in concert with the county health office. I have become the vice chair of the MarineNet board, FYI. NorthNet board really hasn't met. NorthNet is a consortium. MarineNet is a local consortium not recognized by the state library per se, but NorthNet is our official state library consortium, which includes us to the Oregon border, all the libraries there. They've been doing a kind of responding to the crisis workshop-y thing with a local consultant from San Rafael, Susan, I forgot her last name. New library building update. I was gonna hand that to Susan.
So with all the budget cuts, Henry and I were a little concerned as to whether or not we'd be moving forward with the new library building, the conceptual plan. The optics of it, you never know. People might think, okay, if you have all these reduced services and staffing, you know, why are you going to allocate staffing resources to pursue something when right now the basic services are of the most importance? But we have been given the go-ahead. So Henry and I, now that we've received that, we're going to be working on getting the RFP ready and designing the group. I think one of the things that we still haven't been able to discuss at length is kind of the makeup of that subcommittee that weighs in on it, and the process, and how much process there will be based on the fact that we can't have a lot of meetings. So we're still figuring that out, but the good news is it hasn't Sorry, I don't mean a pun, but it hasn't been shelved. So
Okay.
we're really excited about that because we just kind of assumed that we wouldn't be moving forward with all the news that we've been getting about the budget. And that's absolutely the opposite of what the direction was. So we're thrilled.
That is excellent. I had one little thing about the new library building, which is we discussed at a previous board meeting that we would put the 2003 and 2017 reports on a line somewhere, the group 4 reports. The 2019 one is online through the city council website. I checked today, but I don't see those 2 older ones. So either I'm just ignorant as to how to find them, which is certainly possible, or can we put those on there for people who are interested? I know that some of the people who are concerned about Santa Rafael heritage had asked about seeing those older reports. So when you, in your spare time.
Henry and I will take a look at that. I know we sent, I'm sorry, it's been such a long time, but I remember him sending the board about 4 months ago, a whole bunch of different reports after our last meeting. And I know that we posted some online. And I can't quite remember, but I know one of them, we had physical diagrams of it, but we could not locate a physical copy of a narrative type of report. So, you know, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Make sure if it isn't posted, we'll post everything that we have and let you know it's up.
That's great. Thank you. That's really good news. We're extending.
I think the report we're referring to was by Cappy Do Architects. And it is sort of part of the public record, but we will make it even more so.
Yeah, because on the city council site, you know, early this afternoon, I saw various things, but it was the report from last year was really the only one that seemed relevant that I could find at least. Okay, can you give us 30 seconds on racial justice, or you feel like you should just put that off to next time? I don't want to put you on the spot. It wasn't on the agenda.
So at the start of the Black Lives Matter protest, George Floyd, and the ongoing other unfortunate incidences, I think we as a city responded with the mayor and council to make a statement that is online. But we stand with everyone in our community and across the nation against systemic racism. Enough is enough. Our communities are demanding change that is deserved and past due. It's time for all leaders to listen and do more to support our Black community, and we won't stop there. We need to do more to support all people of color. So this was from the mayor and council and sort of includes us. Also, our police chief made a very poignant statement that you may have been privy to. It was a public statement. We also, using our library magic, have come up with book lists about the issue of racism and racial justice, which you'll find on our library website and also linked from the city website. Shout out to Jill Harris for making that happen. It is a very impressive list, including books, podcasts, articles, people to follow, and like 5 other categories of media. So, and you know, that's kind of what we're for, like providing information, and that's how we're responding.
And that's exactly what I was hoping you would say. That's great. If you feel like you want to give more detail on that at the next meeting, that would be fine. But just a quick introduction, I think, was helpful for all of us. Anything else that's critical to mention right now before we all get zoomed out here? Okay, well, thank you all for your flexibility here. This is not the normal meeting, or maybe it is a normal meeting from now on, but I feel like I learned some things. I hope the rest of you did too. I think we're done here. Meeting adjourned. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.